Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this incredibly terrifying emergency Substack Live. I'm Julie Roginsky. I'm here with JoJo from Jers, Joe Carducci, and Michelle Kinney of the Seneca Project, and our partner in crime, Tara Setmayer, was just on MSNBC, so she couldn't join. But I'm sure if anybody was watching MSNBC, you probably heard Tara just do an incredible job just a few minutes ago. Um, we want to thank you guys for joining us on a Friday night, and typically we would not be doing any of this. We'd probably be having a few drinks and trying to relax from the week. But what
Having a
we
drink?
saw in the Oval Office today was so unsettling
Yeah.
that I really feel you guys like we just there are days where years happen is the old phrase. Um, there are years where nothing happens, and there are days where years happen. And today was that day. I feel like the Pax Americana that has kept this country safe from 1945 on ended today on the last day of February 2025. Um,
Mm.
I
Mhm.
feel like everything that we have stood for as a nation, we have not been perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying we've always been the good guy, but by and large, we have been the leader of the free world for a reason. We have been a beacon of democracy, even when we haven't always lived up to that. And today we join the axis of evil. And I say that as somebody who, I think I've mentioned this before, was born in the former Soviet Union and fled that country as a little girl. And we came here for a reason because this country was that beacon of democracy. And um, that ended today. So, Michelle or Joe, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I'm to say that I feel sick in a way that I don't typically feel sick. I mean, it hits me right, kind of in my
Mhm.
solar plexus in ways that I just
Yeah.
I've been devastated about for the last half day.
Well, I know my DMs and my text messages and my Signal app were blowing up from friends that I hadn't talked to in a long time, friends I talk to all the time, my husband. Oh my God, I can't believe this. But yet I can. You know what it was? Like it's the enormity of the whole thing, obviously, and just the horrific just nature of the entire setup. And it was a setup.
Mhm.
Um, It was the Oval Office. It was all of them sitting around. It was like abuse. Like they were talking to him like abusers.
Yeah.
And if
Mhm.
anybody's been on the receiving end of emotional or physical abuse, you know what that means. And watching that, you couldn't help but just want to sink into your chair for the president of Ukraine. And
Yeah.
he embodies everything that they wish that they were: masculinity,
Mhm.
bravery, toughness, resilience,
Integrity. Mhm.
integrity, all of those things. Um, I remember being a little girl when the wall came down. I remember when the Soviet Union collapsed. I had a pen pal in Moscow when I was in third grade, between the time the wall came down and the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I just remember that being such a pivotal moment, even just in my childhood, just with the whole being an American kid and what that all meant. Um, Having two grandfathers who fought in World War II. Um, I'm the descendant of soldiers from the American Revolution. My family's been here for a very long time. Not to imply that I'm any more American than anybody else. We are all equally American. But something about our 248-year history coming to a screeching halt today in a way that we saw it, we heard it. It was so visceral. It wasn't a report. It wasn't something in the New York Times. Like, we actually watched it happen in real time. And I think part of that for me is what was so jarring. Um, And traumatizing, quite frankly.
Yeah, and he had the motherfucking audacity to say that just fucking chef's kiss cherry on top. This was exciting TV.
Mm,
You piece of fucking shit. You have sold our nation to our adversary, to the fucking fascists. And not only that, but like you said, oh my God. Michelle, you nailed it when you said it a survivor of abuse. Was like being re-traumatized watching them picking at him and
yeah.
poking and tearing, and it was like little fucking evil vultures just pulling pieces of him off, and he sat there in that fucking tempest of evil and stood his ground in the only possible way he could, because his country is it has been invaded and is under attack, and
Mhm.
he is their leader, and he's trying to do whatever he can to keep his people alive, to keep his nation sovereign. We talked about this the other day. Trump kept talking about his hands. He has no hands to play. The
Mm,
hand that he is playing is that Ukraine is the bulwark, the stopgap, the fucking barrier against Putin's march across Europe. He doesn't need more hands than that. We used to be in the business of uplifting democracies. That used to be what we did. We don't do that anymore. And the visceral nature of it, I just want to add to that too, Michelle and Julie. This is so personal for you. Obviously, I feel
mm,
that very acutely. Um, I've shared this story. I was fortunate enough, gifted with and privileged enough to at the end of December have been able to step foot in the Oval Office of the United States of America. And when I got there, I felt the reverence of that space, and I felt the history and the weight and the import of that space, because if you don't have a pulse.
yeah.
And what I did in that moment when I walked in there and I got to talk to the president of the United States was I carried my father's story with me.
Mm,
I told him about my dad, who was a Lebanese immigrant, a teenager who came here to the United States of America, seeking that shining city on a hill, seeking the promise of America, seeking a better life. And this country provided him with that life. He was able to take care of his 5 children by himself. And he was able to work for the Department of Defense to pay back what this country had given him. And I got to share that story with the president. And I'm very emotional about this
yeah.
because to be there and to feel that, and to have President Biden say, wow, when I told him my dad's story, and then to see what happened today, the degradation of everything we hold ourselves up to be. Yes, we are imperfect. Yes, we have much work to do. We've had much work to do. But this wasn't just like a step backwards. This was being pushed off the side of a cliff of years, decades of people coming here, of people abroad, looking to us as that beacon of hope, that beacon of freedom. We are no longer. We were pushed off that cliff today, and watching someone tormented like that by lesser beings,
Mm,
such utterly unexceptional beings, like fucking whatever Marjorie Taylor Greene's little stupid pig nose face boyfriend's name is. I don't remember. But and then to
Brian
watch
Glenn.
Marco
But yeah.
Rubio. That's it. Marco
Marco.
Rubio, this one's for you. You know better, you little fucking weather cuck. That's what I call you. I know the word is weather cock, but you don't deserve that. You're more of a weather cuck. And you sat there watching your soul evaporate from your body in real time. You sat there and you know better. And you've sold your soul for what? To what end? Where does this take you? You think he's not going to stab you in the back, you little fuck? He will. You're dispensable too. And I'm like livid. I want to puke. I want to punch throats. I want to cry. All of those things. But everybody here, these beautiful faces, everybody here on this live right now gets it. This is not a partisan issue. And I don't care if you want to pretend like, yeah, America first. Yeah, we own that. Cry harder,
Yeah.
libs. Bullshit. I'm calling you on it
Mhm.
because you watched that and you thought to yourself, holy shit, this isn't who we are. This is embarrassing. This is destabilizing. This is not our better angels, and I don't believe one of you, not one of you, actually thinks that was a strong move. So
All right.
fuck that.
I'm going to tell you guys a story because you've inspired me, Joe.
Mhm.
So, I was at a press conference with Lindsey Graham um, about a year ago, and let me back up. One of the things that I do in my life is I run a nonprofit that tries to create better workplace environments for women, but also not just women, people of color, everybody. And what we do is we try to get rid of forced arbitration, NDAs, and that's It's called Lift Our Voices if you guys want to find out more about that, but that's not really the purpose of this story. Lindsey Graham has actually been a champion on our issues. Sponsored our bill to get rid of forced arbitration for sexual misconduct, sponsored our bill to get rid of NDAs for sexual misconduct. So I'm actually going to praise Lindsey Graham on this. But
Mm.
last June, we were at a press conference with Lindsey Graham because we introduced legislation to get rid of forced arbitration for age discrimination, another very good bill going nowhere under this president, but nevertheless, Lindsey Graham sponsored it. And it was, a bipartisan press conference. Lindsey Graham came in late. And we were kind of milling around before the press conference began. All of us are gathered up at the podium about to speak. But, before we kind of get going, you kind of do your politeness. And I went up to Lindsey Graham, who I don't have much to say to for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But he was very, he has been good on the issues that I care about in my nonprofit space. And I went up to him and I said, Senator, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for Ukraine.
Mm.
Mhm.
Because he was strong on Ukraine. And Lindsey Graham said, thank you. And then we went on to do our press conference, and then Lindsey Graham went away. To see Lindsey Graham today come out and effectively they brought Lindsey Graham right in. They knew who to call.
Mhm.
They
Yeah, they did.
called the guy that they call a neocon,
Yeah.
and he came running to the White House, went running down Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House and stood there in the driveway of the White House. And if you've ever been to the White House, Joe, I know you have.
Yeah.
I know exactly where he was. Right,
Mhm.
right off the East Room, and
Right outside
basically,
of the
yeah,
Oval Office.
yeah, and said Zelensky should resign.
Yeah.
He should resign.
Yep.
And I thought back to a year ago when Joe Biden was president, and Lindsey Graham was a hawk on Ukraine. And then I thought to myself, my God, why are you still in the Senate? Surely there's something else you can do with your life that will give you some sort of pride. You don't need to do this. And I would say the same to Marco Rubio, because watching Marco Rubio's body
Oof.
language today,
Yikes.
he wanted to sink into that couch. I mean, my father used to ream me out when I was 6 years old. I don't think I sank into a couch the way that he was sinking into a couch today as a
You
grown
sunk
man.
into it like you was JD Vance and wanting to fuck it.
Exactly.
Thank God for you,
Yes,
honestly.
thank you. And he sat there, and he knows better, as does Lindsey Graham, right?
Yeah.
Gigi Vance doesn't give up. I don't know what Lindsey Graham cares about other than,
Well, there's a lot of
sucking up to
yeah.
Peter Thiel or whatever the hell else he wants to do. But these
Sucking
guys
something.
actually know. I mean, Marco Rubio and his whole chest beating thing about Cuba. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Whose satellite state was Cuba for all those years, Marco Rubio, and still is? I think you know. Lindsey Graham, who never
Mhm.
met a war he didn't love, you know,
Mhm.
you know. And yet, Marco Rubio, if I were Marco Rubio today, this is what would have been going on in my head. Holy shit, I gave up my Senate seat for this.
Yeah, I was
So
thinking
I
that
can't
too.
resign, because if I resign, I go back to Florida and I don't know what I'm going to do, because who wants to
Yeah,
live in
I'm gonna end
Florida?
up on some
Yeah,
office on K Street or something.
right. So, but Marco Rubio, if he had any integrity at all,
Mhm.
would have walked out today and said, Mr. President, I resign.
Yeah.
Because there are
Mhm.
things in life more important. There are things in life more important than the office.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what's going to happen on your deathbed. You're not going to look back on this day on your deathbed and say, you know what, I did the right thing. You're just not. I know it. In that last moment, right before death, they're not going to sit there and think, oh, thank God I sucked up to Donald Trump that day. They're going to think, holy shit, I sold
Mhm.
out everything I ever stood for, and I knew better
Yep.
And he has
for this.
children. He has children
He has
who are
children.
going to grow up and they're
Yep.
going to wonder because all of us, everyone is going to be looking at this time in history just the way we look at the Holocaust. And they're going to be asking, what did this person do? What did my family member do? What were they doing? And Marco Rubio's children I'm sorry, I have children. I'm not trying to say that they are in any way deserving of any fate that is not good. But I am telling you, they're going to look at their father and they're going to look at his legacy. And he
Mhm.
could have done the right thing in that moment. He could have been a fucking hero for democracy. And just another note about Marco Rubio, because that man fucking flip flops more than a freaking fish out of water. When Putin first stepped foot in Ukraine, what is this, 3 years ago? Marco Rubio was one of the first, loudest,
Yes.
most
Yep.
Yes.
vociferous supporters of us helping. He said, every day until it's done, we will stand with Ukraine. And I remember because I said, that's fantastic. But remember when you turned your back on Ukraine, when you knew that Donald Trump withheld aid for
Mhm.
quid pro quo to help him with this election, the motherfucker got the quid pro quo after all. And I said to then, you should have stood with Ukraine. So, well, I'll take that you stand with Ukraine now. And look what he did today. He went from standing with Donald Trump to supporting Ukraine. And here we are now. He is as feckless as they come, as spineless as they've ever been created. And he had a moment, he had a chance, Julie, to your point, to do the right thing, to be a hero so his kids could grow up and say, my father stood up for democracy. But instead, what did he do? He bent the fuck over like all the rest of them.
Well, you know what's going to happen to his kids, and I'm going to tell you guys another story. And I think I alluded to this when we first did one of our first overt show, maybe. Um, so this is a kind of convoluted story. About 15 or 20 years ago, way before I met my husband, I was at a party, and I met this guy named Michael from Munich. And Michael from Munich was fantastic. Michael from Munich, I was like, okay. We had the greatest conversation in the world. Michael from Munich asked me for my number. I was like, fantastic. I don't know who, the whole thing was good to go. And then the host of the party pulled me aside and said, listen, I love this guy. He's a fantastic guy. Michael's a great guy, but I just want to give you a heads up about something because I know you're Jewish and I know you're from Eastern Europe. And I just want you to know something, even though this should not bear any relevance at all. Michael from Munich's grandfather was, and he named, I don't want to embarrass this guy, so I'm not going to tell you who he was, but you would recognize the name,
Oh
a
no.
very prominent Nazi. So prominent that you would know it wasn't Hitler, obviously, but
Oh my
you
god.
would know the name. And he said his father disowned his grandfather. Michael, of course, is not like that at all. You should not hold this against him, but just so you know. And you guys, I could not do it. It's not fair
Yeah.
to this guy. This poor guy does not deserve it. I get it. I get it. I get it. But he doesn't deserve it. But I just couldn't do it because I played the whole scenario out and I said, what if Michael from Munich and I fall madly in love and get married? Am I really going to procreate and give
Yeah.
birth to the great grandchildren of said famous Nazi?
Yeah.
And the answer was I couldn't do it. Congratulations, Marco Rubio, because in 2 generations, somebody's going to meet your grandson or granddaughter, and they're going to have that reaction. And to
Mhm.
everybody who's
Mm.
part of this, because this is bending the knee to fascists, because what Vladimir Putin is doing in Bucha, what Vladimir Putin is doing, kidnapping Ukrainian children and taking them to Russia for re-education, ripping them out of their mother's arms and sending them to Russia so they could be re-educated to hate their parents and hate their country, bombing and murdering senior centers, hospitals, kindergartens, churches.
For no reason.
That's what you enable today. That is what you enable. The United States stands with those people now.
Mhm.
That's not what this country is about. It has never been about that. This is akin to Franklin Roosevelt calling up Adolf Hitler after 1939 and saying, I'm going to cut a deal with Churchill. I'm going to tell him to just give him back the county of Kent. The Nazis can
Mhm.
have Kent. The Germans can have Kent. Maybe they can have Wales.
Mm.
Why don't they just take Wales? Maybe they can have Scotland too.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you
And this whole
imagine some
shakedown, I'm sorry, but just to
Yeah.
stay on the World War II analogy, this whole fucking shakedown of of these mineral rights in Ukraine. I mean, could you imagine in 1940 with the Lend Lease Act when we were giving basically lending money to Britain to fight the war? If Roosevelt had said to Churchill, by the way, all the coal that you guys have in England, I want that in exchange.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's again, it's the quid pro quo with him. It's he's so transactional. He is the most transactional person, I think, in American politics probably ever, because it's all self-centered. It's never in the best interest of anybody but himself. And, you know, I was sitting there watching JD Vance too, and I feel like there's so much similarity between Lindsey Graham and JD Vance in a lot of ways. And I'm not going to say exactly why, but neither one of them know who they are. And because
Mm-mm.
of that, they just bend in the wind wherever the wind is blowing. And JD Vance is the same way. He's changed his name 3 times. He
Mhm.
is, and also for a kid that grew up in Appalachia, right? To sit there and yuck it up while somebody behind him is asking the president of Ukraine, who's in the middle of a war, why didn't you wear a suit?
Yeah.
Churchill didn't. There's a great picture of
Right?
Churchill
There's
at the
No,
White
it's true.
House during World War
yes.
II. He's wearing basically a jumpsuit. I don't even know what he's wearing, but it's certainly
Yeah, it's
not a.
like a one of those onesie kind of
Yeah.
things.
I
And
mean,
yeah. I mean it's just I just he's such a snake and he's such a waffle, but it's like he just permeates and transforms into whatever room he's in, whatever scenario. I mean, honestly, I think he met Peter Thiel and was like, "Who do you need me to be? I'll be that."
Yeah.
And whatever
Yeah.
gets him closer and closer and closer to ultimate power. I mean, I think it's the same, when he met his wife. Um,
Mhm.
they popped out 3 kids. He calls them her children. She was she clerked for Kavanaugh. She was like a big time
Right.
lawyer. She just kind of stands next to him now. But this is the strong man, machismo, like toxic masculinity. I mean, I was looking around that room. Did you see any women? I didn't.
Well, I was gonna say JD Vance, but no. Mm-mm.
I mean, that's another
Yeah.
piece of this. It was a room full of men,
Yeah.
white
Yeah,
men.
white men. Yeah, and I will say this about JD Vance and Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump, but I'll just make the comparison between Trump and Vance. And what I think is really undergirds all of their awfulness is that they have all this unresolved trauma, like they're
Mm,
frozen in time, right? Like, and I'm not a sociologist, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. I'm a person who has had to grapple with trauma, childhood trauma. I've had to navigate that. I've had to try to heal that, right? And it is an ongoing process, and there's no shame in that. There is absolutely no shame in that. I think that you can do nothing but enrich your life and strengthen your own fortitude, by exploring those things through therapy or whatever your
mhm,
path is. Those are two individuals who are frozen in time as children, who did not get what they needed from their parents when they needed it, and they have never moved on beyond it. And so instead of looking inward and trying to heal, they need to make the rest of the world feel that pain too. They don't
mhm,
know that because they have buried it so deeply down. They are so not interested in exploring any of that and never will. It's metastasized now, so that it's turned into this incredible malevolence that they are pushing outward because they think that makes them feel better. They think that self-soothes, and that's of course the great, like, lie, is that it doesn't. It makes that metastasize further. um that little analysis, armchair psychologist analysis aside, these are broken human beings. Well, human beings is a stretch, but here's the thing too. Donald Trump told us who he was so fucking long ago. He
mhm.
not only told us who he was back in his first term when it was Russia, 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 and I don't have a Trump impersonation, and I'm proud of that fact. He has told us for the last 2 years what he was going to do, who he was aligned with, where the United States interests lied, and
Yeah.
that he was Putin's puppet. He was going to abandon NATO. He was going to walk away from our allies. He has never, not fucking once, ever criticized Putin for anything. And today he went further. He basically called him a victim of the American government under multiple presidents, by the way, because that's not fucking Looney Tunes, but also the media. And then he said that inside the Oval Office, and then he went outside and said it again. Poor Vladdy, nobody was nice to him. He just wanted to take over the world and reunite the Soviet Union and be a dictator. Why is everyone so mean to him? Shut up. fuck you. But everybody who pretended like this is a surprise, hi, Piers Morgan, I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
You didn't
Oh,
listen.
yeah.
You
I'd love to
selectively
know what
didn't
he has to
listen.
say.
And how do
And
you align yourself with him now? How does somebody pick this part out and go, well, I don't like this at all, but I like his tax policy? Really?
Mm.
Really?
and by the way, the best is when he said Putin, he went through some stuff together, the whole Russia hoax. Oh,
Oh,
like
Right.
yeah.
That was
Putin, yeah,
nuts.
yeah, okay.
Together.
That was Looney
Like,
Tunes. Like
are
we went
like,
through this together.
Did we
By the
hear
way,
this?
yeah,
let me
yeah.
just say
Go.
this. He kidnaps Americans. I mean, was it just a month ago when Americans got off the plane after being kidnapped by Vladimir Putin and sent to the gulag? Like, what more is there to say?
And might
That,
Right.
we all remember Navalny?
yeah.
Like, I
Yes.
think of that man's face was going through my mind a lot today, thinking about what that man sacrificed and stood up for. And he is a hero. He is a hero.
Hmm.
And I can't imagine what he would think today if he was still with us watching all this.
You
I
know,
really can't.
it's it's just amazing to me that we are now aligned with Russia
Hmm.
against Europe.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, what
Our oldest ally
what
with
has
France part of that.
I mean, you had in the span of a few days, you had the president of France come here,
Hmm.
you had the prime minister of England come here, and you had the president of Ukraine come here. And he gave effectively the back of the hand, much more rudely today to Zelensky than he did to the others, but still pretty rudely to all three of them, the back of the hand to all three of them. And yet Vladimir Putin can do no wrong.
Yep.
Hmm. That must be how he got that weird bruise that isn't at all indicative of him
Yeah.
being very gravely ill. Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah,
From being
Right.
at the back of the hand.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true, and it is absolute lunacy. Honestly, it is lunacy. Like my first thought today was Europe, get nukes, guys. Like I don't care, Switzerland, Finland, Norway. I don't know, every small little country, get yourselves armed, get yourselves nukes. Like
Hmm.
I'm like just like I'm like I'm like I'm rooting for Europe. I'm like, what are
but
we
wait,
gonna
but do
like?
you
Are we gonna
understand? Like,
attack our allies?
but what you're saying, Joe, is the problem here. That this is how it affects us, right? It's not that we
Right.
have a big quote unquote beautiful ocean. This
Hmm.
is the lesson of us abandoning Ukraine. That this sends to, oh, I don't know, Iran,
Right.
to Saudi Arabia,
To China.
to to China. Well,
China.
China already has nukes, right? But
Right. Right. Right.
to
Right.
All
countries
right.
that don't have nukes, right? We and also to our allies, we better get nukes because that's the only way that somebody's not going to attack us, right?
Mhm.
So what's going to happen? You're going to see nuclearization of country after country after country. Everybody who has the
Fine.
capability will get it. And they will get capability because they will pay whatever they need to pay to North Korean scientists and to Chinese scientists and to Russian scientists to get them these nukes. They're going to smuggle out the plutonium. Like it's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. You're going to have a tremendous number of countries going nuclear for self protection.
Yep.
Some
And
kid in
so the
Texas
big,
is gonna be able
beautiful
to get them on the
ocean,
black market.
yeah, so exactly. So the big, beautiful, dirty bombs, all of it. The big, beautiful ocean that Trump alluded to that separates us from this whole nightmare in his mind is not that big or beautiful when somebody has an ICBM capability.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
you know, in 1945, when we dropped the bomb
mm,
on Japan, it apparently made such an impact on the devastation that we have not had that happen since, despite the fact that more and more countries have gone nuclear since 1945. That is all I don't mean to scare people, but that is all going to change because they will have no choice because Ukraine gave up its nukes in exchange for security guarantees.
mhm.
There was a deal cut. So this is actually something I know about because I wrote my master's thesis in 1945, sorry,
Like,
1995.
you
So
look
that might as well
great.
be was on
You
this
look
topic,
amazing.
was on this topic, and PS, it was the biggest waste of my time until this very moment when I actually get to
Mm,
talk about it. But here's the deal: there was a deal.
yeah.
a deal when the Soviet Union dissolved. There were nukes in Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. And the deal was everybody but Russia gave up their nukes in exchange for security guarantees.
Hmm.
We guaranteed the security. We asked them to give up the nukes. We did. Now, Donald Trump can say, well, that was, whoever, George Bush, Bill Clinton. Uh, no,
Right.
the United States of America did. It's not a question of which president. It's a question
Right.
of the United States of America made a guarantee. And now everybody on earth knows that we are not good. Our word is not good.
No.
Can, can I ask you guys a question, because I did a video about this the other day. The other day when we voted with Belarus, Hungary, North Korea, Russia, like on this issue at the UN. I did a video about, this is a big giant steaming shit on the greatest generation's graves, right? Like on their graves and on their legacies and on their and on their sacrifice. And what I want to know from everybody in the chat too, this is what I want to know, because we all have people in our lives who support Donald Trump, and yet will say that is the greatest generation, right? They will say that those are heroes, because they are right, because those were heroes. They are heroes. They will forever be heroes. They fought and died to defeat fascists. Women here sacrificed everything so they could build the tanks and the airplanes that crushed fascism. So
Yep.
I want to know, those people still, they are looking at this. I know there's cognitive dissonance, but they're looking at this right now, and they're holding that other opinion that is correct in lifting up these people as heroes. How do those two things fucking square? How can you take a big steaming shit on the graves of the greatest generation and wave a Russian flag at the same fucking time? Somebody tell me how. Somebody explain this to me. Like I'm 5, because I don't get it.
I well, first, I mean, when people are in a cult, they don't know that they're in a cult usually, right? I think that's part of it. Um, I think also people don't understand history. I think that they see
Hmm.
moments in history, but they can't connect the dots, and they see the what, but they don't understand the why. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, but sometimes I also just think people are stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Uh,
I or they want to be willfully.
You
Willfully
guys,
stupid. Yeah.
I, all I kept thinking today, and again, if you do know your history, is Neville Chamberlain shaking hands with, as he called him, Herr Hitler in 1938 to give up the Sudetenland, basically give Czechoslovakia to Hitler, and then flying back to London and descending from that airplane, meeting the press right on the tarmac and saying, peace in our time. I met with Herr Hitler and we cut a deal effectively. And now we have, I believe we have peace in our time. A year later, Hitler marched through Poland.
Hmm.
By the way, with the Russians, secret Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So, eh, do you not understand? Like, do people not understand what this means? Do they think that this is all happening over there, so it's not going to affect us? Of course, it's going to affect us. Because you hear Putin, I mean, nobody's paying attention to what Putin's saying. If you look at Russian media, one of my favorite things to actually listen to once in a while, Putin is out there saying quite explicitly he's rejecting the deal that Trump wants to put on the table, which is that basically Putin gets to, let's remunerate here. Putin gets to keep Crimea, which he illegally annexed in 2014, and he gets to keep everything that he has right now, right? But wait, Putin's saying that's not enough. He's not accepting that. He wants more. He's
Of
telling Trump
course.
no effing way.
Of course.
And
Mhm.
and Trump's like, no, no, I think I can do business with this guy. Meanwhile, Zelensky, you're a tool and you can't survive. Like, what?
And you need to resign.
It's
And you need to resign. And
Yeah.
Zelensky's like, I'll resign. I will resign
I
if
oh
Putin
my
gets out of
god,
my country.
when he said he's like, I will step down as president in order to have Ukraine be a member of NATO. My husband and I were talking about that. I was like, that's some George Washington shit, right? Like
Yeah.
stepping down and putting your own, ambition or ego, whatever it is, aside for the greater good, for freedom, for democracy, for all those things that we love and cherish. I mean, that that's big time stuff for him to
There-
even
Yeah.
offer that.
there's not going to be a NATO,
Can
you
you,
guys.
can,
I hate to be
I
the
no.
no,
butt for
I
this.
totally
Oh
I'm in
no.
agreement. I'm in
Can you
agreement.
imagine? Can you imagine like marauders go through your neighborhood and they're like, "Ooh, ooh, I'm gonna go into their house," and they come into your
Mm.
house and they take up residence in your living room. And they take the remote control and they fucking fuck your cat and they use all the toilet paper and they drink out of the milk container and they're like, "Well, we live here now. This is our kitchen. This is our bathroom. This is our house. You can have for now. We're gonna keep trying to attack you over there in that master bedroom, but that's where you can have that, but we're gonna keep attacking you." And then somebody comes in and they're like, "Well, we can broker peace here." Your neighbor comes in your house and they're like, "You know what, Julie, yeah, I understand that this is uncomfortable for you, but if you weren't out there flaunting all your big, giant, beautiful house all the time and threatening to grow your house bigger and make it nicer, then these marauders wouldn't have been like, I need to break into that house and take it over and kill their cat,
Yeah.
or fuck their cat, or whatever they're doing to the cat." Can you imagine that's
This poor
peace?
cat,
That's peace.
Jojo.
Just I know, poor cat. Sorry, but let them. But here's what your neighbor says. But look, Julie, I'm gonna make a deal with you. Can you just let the marauders keep the remote, keep the kitchen, keep one of the bathrooms, and every now and then they might loft bomb your way in the master bedroom. But do you want peace? Oh, and by the way, they're gonna take all your silver, all your family jewels, all the china, all the crystal you might have gotten from your wedding that you'll never use. They're gonna take all that stuff too. But do you want peace or not? Because if you're not going to accept this peace, then they're just going to take it all and you're basically asking for it. And then they're going to go to your neighbor's house and they're going to take that too. That's
Mhm.
not fucking peace. And anybody who's gaslit you into thinking that that's
Yeah.
fucking peace is working for Putin.
But wait,
Period.
it's even worse. It's even worse, Joe, with that analogy, because even if you say, okay, I accept, the marauders would say, actually, no, I don't accept,
Yeah.
because in addition, I also want your car and your children
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
husband,
Yeah.
and also potentially, I don't know, your entire life
Your
savings. I mean,
dog.
that's what it is. Like, even if you
Your
accept,
daughter. Yeah.
and your daughter, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, to
Yeah.
go back to your analogy, Michelle, because what you started out with, it's so true that this was two abusers sitting there
Mhm.
basically beating the shit out of their wife and telling her it's her
Yeah.
fault for provoking them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Thank
thousand
That's
you.
percent what it
exactly what
is.
that was. That is
That is
exactly what that
exactly right.
was.
And
Because
you know,
Yep.
she dared to say, you know what, maybe I don't deserve this. She didn't sit there and take it. For
mhm.
once she
Yep.
piped up. And for
Yep.
not being diplomatic and being have the shit beaten out of her diplomatically, she deserves all the bad shit that's going to happen to her now.
Yep.
That's the
Like, oh,
excuse that
you're
people
gonna
make.
get it later. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yeah,
And
and she
it's
was doing it for her kids. And she was doing it for her
And
kids.
she was
Like
doing it
that's
for
the
her
part
kids.
too.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I
And
mean,
I,
what more is there to say other than this is who this is?
yeah,
An
I
abuser and
mean,
his
when
little
you
enabling drinking buddy beating the shit out of some poor woman who's been taking shit for the last 4 years from this president,
Mhm.
mhm.
both when he was in office
Yeah.
the first time, when he
Oh
was
my
out of
gosh,
office,
right.
and
I
now
mean,
when he's in office
let's
again.
not forget the first Donald Trump impeachment had to do with President Zelensky as well.
Yep.
And him trying to make some sort of quid pro quo transaction, um, the perfect phone call. Like I just, it brings me back. It brings me back to 2022 when all this started. And for several years, for 4 years, I used to work at the Lincoln Project. I was the creative director there for 3.5 years. For our work that we did in 2022, we won two big Webby Awards. One of them was for an ad that I made with our team and also a good friend of mine whose grandparents are Holocaust survivors. We made it for International Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th. It was called Never Again. Um, it was one of the most searing things I think I've ever created in my life. Quite frankly, it was it's burned in my memory forever. The second was we'd made a campaign for Ukraine. And one of the first ads that we made was about Reagan. Obviously, we had to make that stuff about Reagan and remind the Republicans what side they're on. Another one was a 15-second digital ad that we made in Russian to Russian communities, Ukrainian communities in the United States that we targeted, And in the ad, it said, "Do you want your young man to die for this old man?" And that really is what it comes down to for the Russian people. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for the mothers, the fathers who have had to send their sons off to war, to never come home. And obviously, there's been so many people who have died, that they've had to now bring in North Korea to fight their war with boots on the ground. Um, but coming back to the United States with all this, here we are, however many years later. Do people not realize what's going to happen? We're going to end up in a war. Do
Mm-mm.
you think that we can fight a world war with a volunteer army or a military, rather? Uh, don't be surprised if it comes to that. And I don't mean to scare or upset people about that either, but it is, you can't have a lack of imagination here. And so I ask people who might think that today was okay, do you want your young man to die for that old man? That old man being Donald Trump? Something to think
Mhm.
about. Is that worth it to you? Was that worth it to you? Was that choice worth it to you? And this fight that we will be in, um, is not righteous or moral, in any way, as it was for our grandfathers who crossed oceans to fight fascism. Um, these will be fighting a war for the bad guys. And I don't know how any of us can live with ourselves. I don't know what that looks like. What does the resistance look like in all of that? I don't know. I hope it never comes to that. But again,
Yeah.
we can't have a lack of imagination as to where this is going, um, domestically and internationally. I mean, this is really, really, really scary stuff.
And you always say
Michelle,
that,
I
Michelle, and I
think.
think
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, and, just a quick thing, you always say that, Michelle, and I think it's so important for people to just think about what Michelle says always, if you haven't heard her say this before, that we suffer from a lack of imagination here. And
Yep.
all the things that you think are improbable, that are just so fantastical that they can never possibly happen, they've
Yeah.
ha they happened.
Yeah.
They happened, and they will
Yeah.
continue to happen. So everything we're talking about now, war, all the stuff that we think, this big, beautiful ocean that we're separated by,
First of
nine
all, that
eleven.
ocean,
I'll
that
never I'll
ocean
never
ain't that
forget
big.
I'll never forget 9/11. If you've read the 9/11 Commission report, they began by saying the United States, this happened because the United States suffered from a lack of imagination.
Mhm.
We could not imagine
Mhm.
that people would steal planes and fly them into a building,
And use
something
them
so
as
simple.
missiles. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
something so simple that it never occurred to us that something so simple could be done. Same thing here. Sorry, Joe, because I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, I think to pick up on that exactly. I think so. I think so many as Americans, we've gone so long from really understanding the monster in the closet, right? Like we've lived in this happy, warm bubble of believing that we were fine and everything was good, and we never really understood what a real threat was like, or what an imposing threat was like, what any threat of losing our democracy was like. We've disassociated from it because it's been so long since we've had to experience it. So you have that, and you have this default posture that most people take, who, unless they've really faced some serious shit and they've literally looked at monsters in the face and
Yeah.
somehow prevailed. I can speak to that. But you have this natural default position that human beings take, which is to disbelieve that the monster is real. They tell themselves it's not real because that's easier, right? Because when you tell yourselves that, then you can go about your day without having to worry about it.
Sure.
And that's a comfortable default position to take. Again, no shame in that game. It's just what people do. I know so many survivors of abuse who have said to me, there's a difference, though, for a lot of people who have actually stared those monsters in the face and said, I see you, I know you're real. And that's what so many people who have been ringing the alarm on all of this for so long have had as a thread in common. And that doesn't mean that people who have not faced abuse don't understand it, but it is, I would say, a thread that is definitely common. But what it is happening now is the intersection of all of those things, right? Of human nature disbelieving the monster is real, and American society being so disassociated with real threats to our democracy. And then you have a populist being propped up by machinery like the social media that they have, which is insane, and of
Yeah.
course legacy media not helping at all. You have all of those things and you combine them together, and what you have is this moment in time. And it is not hyperbolic to say that even though history does not necessarily repeat itself, it certainly does rhyme. And we are looking at, we are looking at line by line by line of a rhyme right now. And it's not to be hopeless. That's the thing too. I want to make sure that people understand, at least from my perspective, and I think everybody here, maybe, I know I can't speak for anyone else, but we are not powerless to stop this. I know it feels like we are fucking, it is like doomsday, end of the world stuff. It feels fucking like that. But remember, again, we outnumber them, and what all three of us, and I bet you everybody here experienced today, which was calls, texts, holy shit, Joe, what is going on? Julie, Michelle, what's happening? Call me. I don't know. This was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my. When have we had an event like that, or in recent memory? Yes, with Trump, they feel like their daily occurrences. But
This was
this
something
one
different.
thing, right? It in its most fucked up way unified so many people and woke them up. It was a wake up call, if ever there was one, that this shit is real. That fascism is not just knocking on the door; it's sitting at the resolute desk. But we're not powerless to stop it. First of all, we have three special elections. I'm just going to fucking say that can give us the House of Representatives back. Hello, Florida 1-6 and New York
You're
21, right,
21.
Michelle?
21.
Let's remember, we, the people, still have the power, and we're not just going to roll over like a lot of fucking feckless Marco Rubios and Lindsey Grahams are doing and let them take this from us. So I hope that it doesn't sound insane to say that there's still hope, but these calls, these conversations, seeing my friends, like, what the fuck? Like, that actually does give me hope that we will rise up and we will defeat this motherfucking shit, because we are actually still for now in charge, even though it
And
doesn't feel like it.
and yes, and people have asked, what can you do besides calls? First of all, just so you know, the word has gone out, according to NBC News a couple of days ago, that Speaker Johnson, who apparently first claimed that all of these protesters showing up at town halls were paid protesters,
Yeah, I
although
wish.
yeah, right.
Right.
I wish that,
Bullshit.
by the way, I wish Democrats were organized enough
Bullshit.
to actually hire some paid protesters or actually do anything.
They
But
can't pay
but
their
They
influencers.
can't even
yeah,
get
but
together a press conference after one
yeah,
of the most
Chuck Schumer is still deciding what to say about this press conference today.
I
Is the last check.
He's
yeah.
talking
But
about avocados.
yeah, but I will say this: either you show up to their press conferences, to their town halls, and if they're not holding town halls, this is very important. This takes some work, but do it.
Mm.
Organize your own. Rent out a VFW hall. It's like a couple $100. Get a few of your friends and just paper your neighborhood and just go door to door, Xerox stuff saying it's
Yeah.
6 p.m. on Saturday night. We're going meeting at the VFW hall, on Main Street, and we invite your member of Congress.
Put
Tell
their
them to
face
be
on
there.
it. Say
Tell them to
come
be
come and
there.
tell come
And
and tell them what you
either
think.
either they show up because enough people are there demanding that they show up, or you leave an empty chair and you discuss what it is about them that you can't stand because they're cowards and they won't look you in the eye. And by the
Yep.
way, this is not just for Republicans, it's for Democrats too. Because they work for us. They work for us, guys. I worked on the Hill. I've worked for politicians for 30 years. I'm telling you right now, they're scared of two things.
Mm.
One, the Republicans are scared to death of being primaried by Donald Trump and having Elon Musk spend a shitload of money primarying them. But equally as importantly, they're scared of being voted out of office by us, by us. We are as
Hmm.
powerful as Elon Musk and Donald Trump. The only way Elon Musk is powerful in their perspective is that he has enough money to sway public opinion by doing advertising. We're the public opinion he's trying to sway. So don't be swayed, just show up and do this. That's what you can do. Organize your own town halls.
And to that point too, I posted something on Instagram. It's actually in the copy of a Wired article, so you'd have to kind of go look for it. But I put a list of like 15 things you can do other than like donate money. And I'm trying to think of what they are right off the top of my head, but there was one about sharing content. That really does matter, especially when we are up against an ecosystem, a right wing propaganda machine that you cannot imagine. I was talking about what I did for my job before I co-founded Seneca Project with Tara Setmayer. Um, I was making ads and I was helping a rapid response team like deal with this stuff day in, day out. I was doing this 24/7, waiting in the worst of it. You cannot imagine how deep the depths of hell this machine is. And we are so far behind. The good guys are so far behind, at least a decade. And
Mhm.
so it is really important that people with money and influence can invest in those voices, because these things don't just magically happen. They do need investment. um, and if you can't do that, you share it, you like it, you subscribe. Those things actually do matter because when you do those things, it tells the algorithm to then send it to more people. So that is it feels like silly to just, oh, I don't need to. Yes, like something. If you like something or something's important to you, it moves you, like it, share it with someone, share it anywhere. Those things really do matter.
And
Yeah.
if you think you have something to say and you're like, I could never do that. I can't, I'll never get any likes or subscribers or followers or whatever. Nonsense. Like there is no voice too small. There is
No,
no
exactly.
opinion that is invalidated. You to all start somewhere. Michelle, your ripples, right?
Yeah.
I love. Maybe I'll just let you do that, the ripple thing, because
Oh, that's Tara's
my
thing,
point,
but thank you. Yeah,
Paris thing.
it's a quote, but I will
Yeah.
murder it if I even try. But yes, it's great.
Yeah, but like my version of it is, if we all do a little, then no one has to do it all. But also, like everybody out there, to this ripple thing, I'm gonna murder. But like everybody out there has your voice. Every stone casts a ripple in the water, right? So
Mhm.
eventually, those ripples together. This is the gist of it. Like create a wave. And I know we're done with the wave analogy, largely, despite all my pictures of waves. But the thing is, the point is, you have something to say. Start saying it. Micro influencers, blah 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 blah. Like
Mhm.
we want to help people also learn how to do this, because we want to build an army that rivals theirs, an army of
Mhm.
creators, an army of independent voices, an army beyond the legacy media tentacles. Like we there You have something to say, you should go out there and say it. And then you have outsized influence, by the way, in your own circles, in your own lives, your
Yeah.
family, your friends, people you know. They are more influenced by the things that you say than they are by anything I could ever say, anything the news could ever say. So tell them. Have these tough conversations. Maybe they don't know the implications of what happened today. Maybe they're afraid or intimidated to ask because they think that'll make them look stupid or out of touch or disconnected. Maybe you can be that conduit towards the truth. Like there's no action that goes like without some kind of reaction. And I think like that's what everyone needs to understand, is that there's power within all of us. No action is too small. And I just like that, everybody together, this is how we build this thing. This is this community, but also this like this network of allies and friends and relationships, all that stuff. Like kumbaya,
Mhm.
yes, but those human connections that they want to tear apart, those human connections that they want to,
Yes.
have us lose sight of, right? That's the actual antidote, and
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 Mhm.
you
and and
guys,
uplifting each other.
and the time is now. If you ever wondered what you would have done in Germany in
Yeah.
1933, or what you would have done during the McCarthy era here, what
Mhm.
you would have done in the former Soviet Union where my family came from, like if you ever wondered what you would have done, this is the time to do it. And PS, don't be afraid. There are no gulags here yet, right? There are
Well, yeah.
people but literally, there were
Yeah.
people back then who were scared of being carted away to the
Sure.
concentration camp or to a gulag. Like you don't have to even worry about that yet. So my point is,
Yet.
speak up.
Mhm.
Speak up. All of us has like, what can we do? What we're doing right now.
Yep.
Start your own Substack. Invite all your friends. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, all of us started somewhere, right? Like nobody was born to the manor here.
Mhm.
And all we have to do is just speak up, right? Do it on social media. Talk to your neighbor. I got my hair colored today. And the woman doing my hair was like, "Oh, it's kind of, she knows I work in news. She's like, it's been, kind of a crazy day." And I said, "Yeah." And she was kind of aware of it, but not really. So I was saying to her, I'm like, I can't believe what happened in the Oval Office. She's like, what happened? She's, I don't know who she voted. She definitely voted. I think she voted for Trump. And I said, yeah, like I walked her through kind of what happened. And she's like, oh, that doesn't sound so good. So like it kind of the reason I say this is because one at a time. Every opportunity, you don't have to preach to people. Nobody wants to necessarily be lectured by
Yeah.
you. Do it respectfully, but make your voice heard, and we all have unique voices. Listen, Joe is one of the most effective communicators I've ever met in my life. Truly, if she ever ran for office, she'd be like an AOC. But I
Mhm.
say that, but I she has a very different voice from mine, and Michelle has a very different voice from Joe's, and so on and so forth. We're all very different people. We're able to communicate in our own way, and so does every single one of you. Each one of you has your own unique voice, and you should
Yeah.
use it.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Julian, I just want to pick up on what you said. First of all, thank you. That was the most like really like insanely, I'm gonna cry, compliment. Thank you.
It's
But like to
true.
your point, none of us woke up on third base. None of us woke up with some like crown of like media stars, social media, whatever. Like
Mhm.
I was a single, oh, I was married actually at the time, but in 2016 I was a suburban mom. Like what the fuck is happening? I'm just a mom.
Yeah.
I went on Twitter. I was like, how do I tweet? It took me a year to learn how to enter a new line of text where I just thought everything had to be one paragraph. Okay. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't think anybody could hear me, but I needed to be heard because it made me feel empowered, because it made me recapture my voice. And every single time I took a step towards finding myself and my voice was a step forward. And I never had a famous name. I didn't have any, cachet. I didn't come into this thinking I would ever be known for anything. I wanted to say something because I did not want to accept the reality that was being imposed upon me and my children. And that was
Mhm.
my why, and that was all I needed to make me feel like I was not losing my mind, my democracy, and my country all at once. And everyone out there has the capacity to do the same thing. you
Yep.
you you all have that, and even if it only makes you feel heard, and that's all you need so you can keep going, that's all it takes. That's it. Like I just, like Julie said, like just keep, AOC said it, and I think she's right. Every day I wake up and I think, what can I do today? How can I stand up against this today? In acts large and small, what can I do? And we can all do something so that none of us has to do it all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of, some of us need to get back to our kids, and some of us need to have a stiff drink after today.
Me.
I was
But
already doing that.
Me.
Joe's already like 5 bottles in. But
No,
for
just
those of you,
this
just
one
kidding.
glass.
Oh
I'm
my.
just kidding. Joe's got the whole bottle. She's gonna start swigging right now. But um, for those of you who just can't get enough of us and miss Tara Setmayer because she's not here with us today, we are doing our Saturday weekly coffee and conversation. I'm not sure if all four of us will be able to join tomorrow, but at least three of us will be there. Coffee and conversation, which you can check out on any of our YouTube channels. Mine is called Salty Politics. Jojo is, what's your show? Your YouTube?
Are you effing kidding
Are you
me?
effing kidding me? I didn't know that your YouTube was the same as your Substack. Okay, are you effing kidding me? And the
For
Seneca
now.
Project and Mayday Media Network, which is
Yep.
the
Which is
overall one for
eventually
this,
where everything will
where
live, but right
everything's
now we're
gonna
trying to
live.
get the word out as
Yep.
much as possible. Yeah.
That is tomorrow, and we're all gonna tweet it, not tweet it, we're gonna tweet it out, put it out on Blue Sky, put it up on our
Yep.
Substack, so you'll be able to figure out
At
how to
10
do it.
a.m. 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Eastern.
Eastern, 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. That one is more like you guys send questions in the chat. It's super
Yeah.
casual. I'm sure we'll be talking more about Ukraine, but not just that. We really would love to see you guys there. We've been
Yeah.
getting literally 15, 20,000 people showing up Saturday mornings, which we're so grateful that people are
Amazing.
spending their
Amazing.
Saturdays with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you. Stay strong. We're going to get through this together. It's not going to be pretty. It might actually be really pretty effing painful. If my father were not watching, which he might be, I'd use a much stronger
I know
expletive,
I
but
always
he
have to
gets mad.
watch
Sorry,
myself too. I'm
Julie's
like,
Yeah, but
dad.
we always get mad at Julie's dad gets mad when she curses.
Sorry, Julie's dad.
So, so thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful night. We'll see some of you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we will do this much more often because I feel like this is group therapy
mm.
for all of us. So thanks,
Cathartic.
everybody.
So cathartic.
So cathartic. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys.